far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment, it's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny. 100 women growing strong. 100 women where you belong. You stood tall and now you see, you have reached your destiny. Woman, woman.
As people of African descent, we offer this land recognition in solidarity with the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island in the efforts and deliberate intentions toward decolonization. As people of African descent, we acknowledge the land of Turtle Island that sustains us, express deep gratitude to its indigenous peoples, and pledge to honor our dignity and divinity that ultimately connects us all. By Kay Johnson. Welcome to 100 ABC Fireside Chats. 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women is a bold project initiated by co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, and Donna Jones Simmons. Our mission is to celebrate and archive the professional accomplishments of trailblazing Black women from all across Canada. The goal is to create an ever-expanding database available for current and future generations via print media, public and private libraries, as well as our website, which is www.100abcwomen.ca. In addition to our fireside chats on topics that matter to our communities, such as education, healthcare, entertainment, creative arts, trade union, and so much more, we offer biennial book launching galas and biannual symposiums. The co-authors and co-founders would like to take this opportunity to thank each of you for attending today's fireside chat. We know that you will find these sessions educational and inspirational. So sit back, relax, and hear from our brilliant and talented honorees.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Nyango, and I'm very honored to be moderating the last episode of our current season. And I'm coming to you from the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin people in Gatineau, Quebec. This episode is being recorded at the end of June, so I'd like to acknowledge Pride Month. Happy Pride, everyone. Also, one of our founders, Dr. Denise O'Neill Green, recently lost her beloved husband, and we'd like to convey our heartfelt condolences and love to her and her family at this difficult time. And now to the matter at hand. Our conversation about lived realities and disability journeys. We're going to be talking about neurodivergence, technology support, etiquette, and inclusion. And we have three amazing panelists who are going to give us their diverse perspectives on the topic. They are Rochelle Avery, Queen Kukoi, and Jennifer Monteith. And before I introduce them, I'd like to just sort of set the table and just quote a few statistics just so you get a sense of the lay of the land when it comes to disability. So this is from the Canadian Survey on Disability, which gathers data on disability in Canada. So the 2022 survey identified 10 types of disability: seeing, hearing, mobility, flexibility, dexterity, pain-related, that's a big one, learning, developmental, mental health related, and memory. Did you know 27% of Canadians aged 15 and older, or 8 million people, had at least one disability, and the most common type identified in the survey was pain related, with 62% of those disabilities, those with disabilities reporting that. Then there's mental health related, seeing, learning, memory, and developmental disabilities, and those saw increases between 2017 and 2022. Now, 24% of women in Canada report having a disability, and Black women face significantly higher rates of discriminations, often linked to race or ethnicity. And for Black and Indigenous women, this number rises to 35% plus. Now to our panelists. We have Queen Kukoi, who's a Black, genderqueer, neurodivergent, creative technology artist whose work explores the intersections of healing, cultural heritage, and speculative futures. She's the co-founder of Oddside Arts, creative technology nonprofit that merges art, technology, and wellness through Black feminist thought, queer theory, and noetic sciences. She is a 2024 100 ABC Women honoree. Next, we have Jennifer Elizabeth Monteith, a trailblazing Canadian model, entrepreneur, and heart transplant survivor who has spent decades breaking barriers and building bridges. She immigrated to Toronto in 1965 from Jamaica and made history as one of the first Black models in the Canadian catalog industry. And in 1976, she founded Different Faces, the first multicultural model and talent agency in Toronto. And she is a 2022 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women honoree. Last but not least, we have Judge Rochelle Avery. She is one of 10 citizenship judges in Canada and is currently assigned to the Greater Toronto area, which includes Hamilton, Niagara, Kitchener, Windsor, and London. She's an adjunct professor at Queen's University Law School, and she's co-author of the textbook Tribunal Practice and Procedure. In 2021, she received the Lincoln Alexander Award from the Law Society of Ontario, making her the first and only paralegal to receive this recognition in the award's nearly 20-year history. She is a 2022 100 Accomplished Black Canadian Women honoree. Welcome, welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Yes.
for having me.
So since we're going to be talking about your lived experiences, can each of you, I know it's hard to summarize, but can each of you summarize what your situation is and a little bit about what your journey has been? We'll start with Queen.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming and hearing all of our stories. I have multiple comorbids, but today I'll focus on ADHD and autism. And so for me, experiencing the world can be like very overwhelming at time. I have like sensory flooding where I like feel everything like sound and light, people's energy, and my senses. They can sometimes be a superpower, but they can be completely overwhelming depending on, the environment. My brain is always like on the go. thoughts like shoot off like fireworks, and then the autism, I need like structure and routine and deep focus. And so it's like having like one foot on the gas and then the other foot on the brakes. And so my emotion processing, it's not linear, and I often feel things deeply and I need time to fully understand or express what's happening. But using art and creative technology tools, it helps me create something beautiful from all the chaos that happens in my brain.
And we're going to get more into, how uh, the neurodivergence shapes your creative process. We'll get into that. Rochelle.
So I approach this topic in a multifaceted way because I'm the child of someone who experienced disability through a motor vehicle accident. So I was still in high school when my mother got in a very serious car accident. And we found ourselves then in the throes of navigating her disability and navigating a brain injury and physical limitations. I supported her and also experienced her going through, applying for ODSP herself and CPP disability benefits. Our lives changed very drastically. She had been a registered nurse before then. But then I also watched her navigate her own educational journey where she ended up graduating with a degree in social work, magna cum laude from York University. Then that kind of prompted me to get into the legal field through her experiences. And I taught for many years at Mohawk College in the paralegal program where I taught human rights law and taught about disability rights and navigating the human rights process. And then found myself in 2019 navigating through a very similar process because I got into a car accident where I sustained a brain injury that I had to navigate through healing and navigate through the entire health process and also accommodation process myself. And thankfully on the other side of that. But at the same time, I kind of come to it from the legal perspective, having been a practitioner in human rights law, teaching about human rights and accommodations, and then also having the lived experience both as a child affected and even my own self being affected as well.
Thanks for that. And we're going to come back. One of my questions is going to specifically be about rights when it comes to disabilities. Jennifer, you have an interesting story as well. Tell us
Yes,
about your
I
situation.
do. Yes, I do. Well, I started in the fashion industry and through different phases, the first multicultural agency I founded in 1978, I was asked to feature more multicultural models. Because of lack of business knowledge, I had to soon close that down and go get the knowledge. And I went forth and multiplied. I lived in Belleville for a number of years, from 82 to 85. While I was there, I went to college and took a business accelerated course. So that armed me to come back to Toronto. But after you leave the fashion industry for a few years, it's hard to get back in as it was changing. So I registered with an agency where I appeared in trade shows and conventions, and I saw the missing links. And there I discovered the office away from the office, which I call the Exhibitor Support Center, the office away from the office, which are services for show management, the exhibitors, as well as attendees. I also created a platform for people between careers that were able to meet decision makers in the industry. And while doing all these amazing things, I was also mothering and foreign students and running a home. And then I start having shortness of breath. I was going too much, and more I found that there's something not right here. I need help. And I went to my doctor where they discovered that I had heart failure, congestive heart failure. And that's where the challenge started, to be continued.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow, so that's quite
It's been quite a journey
mix.
because
Yeah,
I
it's
had
quite a journey and quite a mix. So,
quite a
and
mix.
different ways at coming at disability. One thing you didn't mention is that your amazing son is a sign language interpreter.
Yes, my amazing gift is Christopher Delange of Toronto Sign Language Interpreter Service.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you know a bit about him, seeing him
Very much
during
so.
COVID.
Yes,
Yes, so that was
exactly.
one of the one of the questions I think you ask is me is what is one of the experiences.
Yeah.
And one of the experiences that I remember most is on Mother's Day at Mayfest, being on stage with my son, interpreting organ and tissue donation information.
Mm-hmm.
That,
So,
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt, but so that brings me to the organ transplant that you did receive that enabled you to be here today.
Exactly. You want me to talk about my
Yes.
transplant now? Well, before I got the heart that I have now, that's keeping me young at heart, because God got me a 25-year-old heart when I was 57. I had an LVAD when they first detected the challenge that I was having. The left side of my heart was not strong enough and pumping the blood properly. And from Toronto General, the team of the LVAD program, which is the Left Ventricular Assist Device program, they recognized that and implanted one, which is the bridging the gap between getting well and being well enough for transplant. So I had that for 20 months
Mm-hmm.
and got strong enough to receive my gift of
Mm-hmm.
now celebrating 15 years.
Wow, that is amazing. We're going to come back to organ donation later because I know that's one of your passions. So, Rochelle, the legal aspects, the human rights aspects of disabilities, can you tell us more about that, since that's your field of expertise?
Absolutely. So, I'll speak from an Ontario context. I'm joining from Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is a traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Haudenosaunee Nations. And, from an Ontario context, we have a number of pieces of legislation that I know province to province will be very similar. So we in Ontario have the Ontario Human Rights Code, which provides the framework for protecting individuals from discrimination based on disability. And it recognizes that disability encompasses a wide range of conditions, both visible and invisible. And we're talking about a lot of those invisible things. And so that provides the framework in Ontario in terms of that you cannot discriminate against someone because of their disabilities, physical, mental, learning disabilities, as well as mental health issues and addiction. So that all falls under disability. But we also have the AODA, which is the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. And so the AODA was something that was actually created in 2005 with the expectation that Ontario would be fully compliant by 2025. And here we are. And we may not be, we're definitely not at the 100% mark. However, the AODA further kind of expounds upon the term disability, again, covering a wide range of visible and invisible and visible conditions, whether they were caused by birth, whether they were caused by accident or developed over time. We're all talking about all of those things. So blindness and visible impairment, deafness and hearing disabilities, speech impairments, paralysis, amputation, brain injuries, epilepsy, intellectual disabilities, a number of things, reliance on a service dog or on a mobility device, mental health challenges, learning disabilities. And so the AODA is another form of legislation that kind of helps to solidify rights of people with disabilities within the provincial framework. Again, each province has their own human rights code that would incorporate disability. And then I should add that part of the Ontario Human Rights Code is this duty to accommodate. So the duty to accommodate says, essentially, it's governed by the code, and it mandates that organizations must make changes to meet the needs of individuals with disabilities. So that includes ensuring that people can work productively, live independently, and access services available to non-disabled individuals. So it also says that you have a duty to accommodate to the point of hardship. And so what does that mean? It means that everyone should have the equal opportunity to enjoy the same level of benefits and privileges experienced by others. And ultimately, any accommodation needs to respect someone's dignity, needs to respond to a person's individualized needs, and allow for their integration and full participation. So that's the legal framework. From a Canadian context, we have the Canadian Human Rights Act that does the same thing, essentially. And so what we have is legislation that supports accommodations for persons with disabilities. We can talk a little bit about what that looks like in terms of the advocacy piece, but that is kind of the legal framework that we're operating within. And it's really important that people know that, to empower them to then act and to ask for the accommodation that they need.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive sort of, awareness in terms of obligations and rights, right? And responsibilities. So, Queen, how do you function? Because you described to us what the world is like for you. So how do you cope? What are your coping mechanisms? What are the tools that you use? And in your own creative process and approach to accessibility, like how do you go about that?
I mean, yeah, so in terms of accessibility tools like ChatGPT, it's like my go-to for my executive function. I use it to help structure my thoughts. Sometimes I use it to have draft or reword, emails. Um, it helps me remember details for my projects. And sometimes I get like so overstimulated I can feel stuck. I'll use it to like just offload ideas or to-do lists, and it helps like create like timelines for me oftentimes. And then I found more recently, striving to do it more frequently is schedule blocking. And so it reduces overwhelm by like separating each task I have to do into blocks to give me like a time limit to work on it. And my business partner, Nico, is so supportive. And she'll often help like us do that for our workload. And I also have like energy-based scheduling too. And so sometimes because of like overwhelm or overstimulation, like I just want to cry. So I'll even like schedule out time to like break down essentially and give myself a moment for a release, whether it's crying or sometimes it's screaming. So sometimes I'll tell my daughter, okay, I'm gonna scream for a little bit. She's so used to it. She's like, okay, mom. And I'll just go in my room and just release like a loud scream. I'm sure some of my neighbors are like, what the heck was that? But I think they know by now. Well, like what I'm doing. They're probably like, oh, it's just Queen releasing, you know? And then in terms of my art, um, yeah, like my process is non-linear. I can't create oftentimes in a straight line. And so my process is often intuitive, sometimes chaotic, but I'm striving more while I unmask to honor that process. And it means that my art can evolve through layering. My art, because I do a lot of pattern work in my art, it's a form of stimming. that I wasn't aware that I was doing, that I've now transformed into embedding it into my art practice. And so as a child, in order to retain information, I would like often what was perceived as doodling, but it was like a form of note taking. So I would like draw these patterns and then keywords that the teacher was saying I would write in there. And that's how I would remember, the conversation. And so integrating like augmented reality into my work. So I integrate soundscapes like sound bowls or like humming or different types of sounds that feel like right in the moment, that feel intuitive to the process of the art I'm making. And then other folks can often engage in this as well as integrating like affirmations into it as well.
Wow, that really is amazing. And for people who criticize AI, well, you just heard of a use, a use that's very, very critical.
I
I'm
mean,
going
we
to
have
ask
to be.
Jennifer, pardon?
I was gonna say we have to be critical of
Yes.
AI at the same time too. I can't be like, don't criticize it, because
No,
it's not often Black folks are in those spaces, so we need to
yeah,
be more critical of it and also involve us more in the process of creating it. But that's a whole nother.
that's a whole other episode, right? But point well taken. So Jennifer, I'm going to ask you the same question about how you've navigated um, your situation since you've
How
had
I
the transplant.
how I've been able to navigate to get back out and get back into business, which my boys took care of while I was in
Hmm.
the hospital and made more money than I did initially. But now I find that I must eat properly. Diet is equally important to my overall system and my energy, my memory. I also need to do more mindful exercising, like after eating and like getting up in the morning and getting out to walk. That's part of the medication. It's not just pills alone. So you have to start paying attention to oneself because that's the major organ of the human body. So being mindful of it all the time and not just sometimes. So eating and being a lot more exercise and being outside and being around joyful people, that those are really important things to me. And time with my children. I love the backstories because they're both business people. I also spend a lot of time advocating for organ and tissue donation in different communities. And I find that in the Black community, the work is a little stronger, more information needed, because so many of them, they have their religious ways, and then there's the ways that they don't know the technology that's available today. So I must say, beadonor.ca. You
Yeah.
go to beadonor.ca, and lots of information is there to educate you about organ and tissue donation, which is something now that's incorporated in your driver's license.
Hmm.
Not just your driver's license, but your OHIP card. So if
Hmm.
you go to beadonor.ca with your OHIP card and key in those numbers, you could register online, and there's a lot of answers about the process of organ and tissue donation.
Thanks
One
for that.
person could
Yeah.
save up to 8 lives, and it's just such a fantastic technology that we have that has given me the gift of a second chance at life, and I want to dance.
Yeah, and we thank the person who did sign the back of their card because you're
I
here.
absolutely do that every morning I get
Yes.
up, and I'm grateful that they put it all back together, and that organ keeps
Hmm.
me going and keep me being involved in some spectacular things.
Yeah.
And keeping on, and have another chapter yet
Yeah.
writing.
So thanks for that. I'd like to hear what Rochelle's lived experience was after she had her uh, accident.
So, yeah, when I got into my car accident, I just figured, oh, I've got some physical limitations here. I was in a lot of physical pain. And so, I was at the time teaching full time and doing citizenship work. So I had about 170 students, plus the work that I do at citizenship. And I just thought, okay, I'll just take some time off. I've got all this time that I can take to heal physically. But I noticed very quickly that my memory was almost gone. So I knew that I had children. I knew that I had my husband, but I couldn't remember details of their births, or I couldn't remember really my husband. There's a movie, I think it's called Memento or something like that my husband it was talking about one time. And it was basically, I noticed myself with huge gaps in my own lived experience. And so it kind of frightened me initially. I knew that I had a concussion. So it was just about, okay, let's just get through this concussion therapy and let's just try to heal from this. And you're going to be perfectly fine. And in a few weeks, you'll be fine. But after a few weeks and after a few months, I wasn't fine. And so that began my healing journey, healing my brain, because my daughter and I were in the car accident. She also got a concussion, but she healed and was kind of back on track, but I wasn't. And so it really required, one, for me to educate myself about what happens after you get a concussion, and how does a concussion even happen, and what's involved here, and what do I need to heal, and then asking for help. And I'll tell you that it required a lot of advocacy on my end, and I think I had a sense of urgency because of what I do each and every day. And so I asked for help, and I kept asking for help, and I kept going to various services, and really just trying my best to talking to people who I barely knew about my own experiences, so that I could get a suggestion, and I would just go down that path and kind of see. And eventually I ended up getting a referral to an amazing doctor who put me on what he calls a concussion protocol. And so I started taking a number of supplements and a number of so it's Dr. Comer. He has a number of things that you're supposed to do. And he said, your work is so important. I need you better. And so I followed his protocol day in and day out. And very similar to Jennifer, it involves mindfulness. It also involves exercise. It also involves, for me, a sleep protocol. So not only do I have a sleep protocol, but sleep is very important for me. And once I really got on track with that, and really focused on my healing, and not just kind of coasting through and kind of flying by the seat of my pants, I was able to actually tangibly see healing. And, I took advantage of anything that I could, including the benefits that I have, in order to really accelerate as best as I could my healing process. And I learned from that, asking for help, including my own family, and having to really be vulnerable, which is hard for somebody like me who feels like they can do everything themselves. And so, and having to be honest, and having to get really challenging feedback from my family about even what they were experiencing based on my experiences, because I wasn't the only person going through this. And so, I have little things that kind of still help me through. If I'm going to a concert, I put in earplugs because everything's still loud for me. If I feel a headache coming on, I have a weighted blanket that I put on my lap that just kind of helps, apparently, to be able to kind of abate a headache, or to abate some of the nausea that I sometimes might get. So there's little things that I still do that will just ensure that I have better days, but it's also just listening to myself. And I build in breaks, I build in rest. I'm unapologetic now about rest. And I'm also unapologetic about taking care of myself, because I was finding that I was not taking care of myself. And part of the reason why my healing was so challenging was because everybody else came first. And so it was really important for, for my kids to be okay. Mom had to be like more than okay. And so it's been a journey just of my own self actualization, but also in terms of recognizing some of the things that I teach, what that looks like tangibly. So,
Thanks for that. And we're going to stay on the topic of care. Uh, Queen, what does collective care and community support look like in your journey navigating disability and healing? And what are like the do's and don'ts, especially for someone in your situation?
Yeah, so first, interdependence over independence. I've learned that strength isn't rooted in doing it alone. It's being able to like lean on community that's willing to offer support as I offer support often to others. And that means like sharing resources, often emotional check-ins and honest communication without guilt. So sometimes when we start a meeting, it was like, "How are you doing?" And I'm like, "Ugh." You know? And I love that about the space that we've created at Oddside because like we don't always have to be on. Like I've literally been like so overstimulated, but needed to get through something that I've like cried through meetings, but we still got, the work done. And I wasn't crying because of the meeting. I was just overstimulated. That happens to me sometimes too, where I just can't necessarily control it. And I know in other workspaces, I would often have to like go hide in a washroom till I got over like a panic attack, but often like, you know, normalizing me being overwhelmed and still as trying to work through like a problem that needs to get done or like people just even asking me if I need to like step away because oftentimes I can still keep doing the work. I'm just like crying through it, and we offer that type of space for folks we work with and being able to disclose like those vulnerabilities aren't seen as something like bad because often it's like demonized in like the corporate world if they're like, oh, like you're having a challenge, like you can't be in this space. And so like uh, folks around me act as a witness as I often act as a witness and not to rush people through like the hard moments, sometimes to sit in it, to hold space. And it's this kind of witnessing that's a deep part of my healing process. And it's something I strive for others to do. And in that you can access like joy and softness as well because community care isn't always about like crisis. Sometimes it's about accessing joy and rest and pleasure and laughter and food. Oh, food's like a huge thing in what we do. And in those healing moments, it's a huge part of like our collective care practice. And through Oddside, we co-create spaces for folks of the African diaspora, the queer community, those navigating mental health and neurodivergency to be celebrated and supported, not just as an organization, but as a care space. And we use healing as ritual, so it's very spiritual for me. And embedded in it is all of our ancestral practices, our ceremonies, our storytelling, and collective care often looks like making art, sharing food, breathing together in a rhythm. And it's these things that help us reconnect and ground us to each other and the earth.
Hmm. Well, okay, so that's life at Oddside, but what about someone who is not fortunate and privileged enough to be working for you and Nico and Oddside? Like how, what kind of care, like, I don't know, like what would that look like?
See, that's a hard question for me because
Yeah.
I've never really been able to work long in corporate spaces
Mm,
because of
hmm.
my neurodivergency. And
Hmm.
so what you'll find often with people who are neurodivergent, they have their own businesses, they have their own consultation practices. But I
Hmm.
know when I did work in like corporate spaces or like when I was a provincial youth outreach worker for a while, which was it's a very like that type of space, you're also able to like kind of be in community care at all times while you're caring for others. Like community also cares for you. And so that's a very like specific kind of space or job, to be in that really like like the provincial youth work outreach program, like the management there at the time, Liqua, like he was very supportive. And, there's moments in between where like I met with a youth who, just got out from like a violent act. And so we're navigating the justice system together. We're navigating mental health spaces. And then going to a next meeting, where a young person has a trigger warning. I'm going to talk about suicidal ideation, where, they tried to complete suicide. And those are like also my experiences. So I was often triggered by those situations. And so what I would do to hold space for myself in between, sometimes it looked like a 10-minute nap, like in between, to just like rest and reset, and deep breathing, and sometimes yelling. But like those are all like temporary fixes in a
Yeah.
capitalist society that isn't like meant for us to hold space in. And so I don't know that I have space to really offer like,
Yeah.
like an
Yeah.
answer for that, other than like start your own shit. Sorry. Like,
I'm with you,
maybe
girlfriend.
build spaces that are meant for you and find your people. That's like,
Yeah, yeah. That's some pretty good that's some pretty good advice. Jennifer, etiquette, like someone, who is navigating one form or another of disability, how should people approach the person? And what kinds of things do people look out for?
Ooh, wow. Um, how do you approach them? I'll start there.
Mm-hmm.
If you see someone that is looking different, having a moment of their own, and you want to know if you can be of assistance or move things along, ask. Ask. You don't have to wait until you're my age and decide that you're old and you don't care what people think anymore. We start right now, every day. We have to ask, how can I be of assistance? How can I help? And make that clear. I think that's one of the starting ways is asking and following through with, if you want to help, following through and helping.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to Queen. Um, yeah, the joyful things, doing joyful things. It's a part of life today. It's a part of healthy living, is finding joyful things. And part of my medication, beside the blister pack of medication for anti rejection, is spending quality time with my sons, no friends
Mm-hmm.
or anything, just time seeing how they're doing. That
Yeah,
is,
don't isolate yourself.
I don't isolate myself, but it's also my joy because they're doing so well. And I got a second chance at life to hear how they're navigating as being young men in the city today and young entrepreneurs. That is joy for me. And
Mm-hmm.
being able to go out and speak to other young people and try to educate them about being themselves and asking questions, tooling yourself with things that you want to be a part of. No one's going to answer things for you unless you ask them what you're interested in. And everyone is willing to share their story and their resources if you ask.
Mm-hmm. So since we're you got us there, the advocacy piece. I'm going to ask Rochelle to talk about how you advocate like you did for your parent.
So what's really interesting is that, so, there's kind of like this two-edged sword in the sense that while as employers or as friends or family, we ask what that person might need in order to feel supported and heard. I think, and I learned this, that I had to know exactly what it is that I wanted. And so there's an education piece that needs to be done in terms of understanding what it is that you're experiencing and understanding the types of accommodations that you would need to be successful, because it varies from person to person. One person with ADHD might require one thing, and the person who's sitting right beside them needs something else. And so, we have to we have to know what it is that we need in order to be successful, in order to thrive, and in order to be joyful, so that we can ask for those things. And then the reciprocal component of that is then to be responsive to what that person is asking for, and most importantly, being open to what does that look like and how do we do this together. And so the forms of accommodation, could be changing your policies and your processes in order to accommodate this person. It could be your procurement policies or the contracts that you have. It could be performance standards that you change in order to accommodate this individual. And that could be individualized, or it could just be organization wide in order to be inclusive, right? Your decision-making practices. Like, I think that this requires for organizations and departments and agencies to really kind of look at their practices and their policies and procedures holistically to ensure that they're actually being inclusive, like generally, like that holistic design, that inclusive design piece. Just for those who might be out there who are thinking, well, what are some of the things that I can do, especially under the code? You can ask for a flexible work schedule, for instance. If you know that you just, like, for instance, I know that I could never do a 7 a.m. thing. Like, I can't say never, but it couldn't be that my job required me to be like active and alert and alive at 7 o'clock in the morning, like, because my body hurts at 7 o'clock in the morning, right? It takes me a little bit for me to kind of feel good. Not long, but 7 a.m., I just find myself at like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. My body doesn't do well with a job that requires that. And so allowing for a flexible work schedule, asking for a flexible work schedule, asking for modified job duties, modified policies, making changes to your building. Maybe you need a ramp, or maybe you need a handrail, or maybe you need wider doorways, what have you. Modifying a workstation, that ergonomic assessment, and seeing what makes this person feel better when they're physically working. Providing specialized adaptation or assistive devices, computers, technology. When I was first dealing with my brain injury, I had speech to text software that was very useful for me, because having to kind of navigate all of that was a whole lot, right? But I could definitely talk. So I just needed something that could just kind of get it all down for me. And then editing was so much easier for my brain than having to write it myself, right? Providing alternative ways of communicating with that employee or with that individual, additional training that they may need or the organization needs, short-term and long-term disability, job bundling or unbundling, right? Maybe the processes just don't work for that individual person. Maybe we can unbundle some things and kind of modify the way that they do things. And then there's also alternative work, which I won't belabor for too long, but alternative work is a whole other process. So there's temporary alternative work, and then there's also permanent alternative work. Maybe the person has said that I'm now ready to return to work. So what does that alternative work look like on a permanent basis for that individual? Like, that's built into our code. And so, I hear Queen saying, like, being in the corporate world doesn't work. But in many cases, it's because we don't even know that we can ask for those things. We don't know that we can have these conversations. And maybe it's true. Maybe corporate's not for everyone, but maybe for some people, knowing that they can do this and they're empowered and the employer especially is responsive, you could have a very thriving environment where this person can still be able to shine and provide their input in such a meaningful way, while being responsive to their needs. So
that is amazing. That's a lot. That's
a lot.
Thousands of nuggets in in a short space of time. Since my industry is media, I want each of you to give us your thoughts on the impact that media and popular culture have on, the lived experiences of people living with disabilities. Like, how does that impact? Queen, you talked about corporate, but yeah, media also is corporate and projects a certain image of what is normal, what is not, what is acceptable, what is not, what is functioning properly, what is not functioning properly, what is performance, what is peak performance, and what isn't. So your thoughts on the influence of media and popular culture?
Yeah, I think neurodivergency is like largely missing from that conversation in media. And when it does show up, it's not it's not as visible as I would like it to be. As someone who's neurodivergent, like I can watch a show and be like, that person's autistic or that person has ADHD. And while I can't make diagnosis, like you can kind of see some similarities that show up in your life to like a character. But I really wish they would be like, you know, showing like variations of what people exist that look like having autism, and like sometimes the character is like overtly what society perceives as what autism is, and then other characters you're like, oh, that character is just weird, but really like they're neurodivergent and it's cool to be neurodivergent. In fact, most people don't have normal, brain function. Society tells you that in order to be normal, you're supposed to move through the world a specific way. But the truth of the matter is most people don't, move through the world like how normal people are perceived to, which is just like a coded word for like whiteness, really. Like,
Yeah.
and how you're supposed to move through the world, but most people don't move through the world that way. And I think that media fails hard, you know,
Mm-hmm.
at doing that. And but I do appreciate the nuances in some characters, especially Black characters that we're seeing now that, exists like without it being what society perceives, Blackness is supposed to be. And there's like, this awkwardness that's beautiful about some characters that you could be like, okay, yeah, that, for sure that person is neurodivergent. But I just wish, you know, there'd be like more disclosure on it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one person, this, I can't remember the name of the show, but they almost died and they hit their head. And so they were navigating like brain issues, but they never spoke about post-concussion syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
When the character is navigating these spaces, you just saw the character was like perceived as weird or quirky after having like these challenges where like, light and sound would impact them and they would get dizzy. But it's like, okay, why? Why is that happening? Right? And the other characters would be like, oh, that character is like weird, but like you never see the why
Yeah,
or have the
exactly.
character like find out why.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see them going to the doctor and navigating like those type of everyday things that happens to people who have visible or even invisible.
You know what, Queen? You've just written yourself, you've just pitched a show idea right there. Totally, totally. And I could see you executive producing it and everything. Absolutely. It should be an entire show with neurodivergent people so
Mhm.
that, we get to be on the other side and see how they
And
see
we all know we attract each other. Like before I
exactly.
knew it, everybody around
Yeah,
me, they were like, "Hey, I also have this," and I'm like, "Word!" Like,
right?
we just are drawn to
So,
each other.
Jennifer, so speaking of diversity, you yourself created an agency that sought to address uh, a lack of diversity. So how would you go about addressing this issue of the erasure of disability?
Um, well, I've been very fortunate to be involved with Trillium Gift of Life as well as Toronto General. And I'm on the patient family advisory board with Ontario Health. So I'm privy to some of the knowledge of things that they are doing to get more information out main into the mainstream, into more community centers and into clinics and information to doctors and things like that.
Is there media interest in the work that they do?
There's very little media interest, and that's exactly where I was going. So it's up to us to go out, and I've become very pushy because now I've retired from the exhibitor support center because COVID changed the dynamics of my business. And so I had to retool and come out, and being so grateful for the gift that I have. This is something that I'm doing, and I'm even trying to learn how to sign so that I'm able to reach the deaf community about this because there's another community that no one is being of service to except for my son, Christopher Delage.
Mhm.
Uh, even the news, when they have them on for the main story, then they pan the camera in and the deaf community don't hear anything. So I think those people have to be more aware of, where they're closing them out. And I think we have to really go out and start saying, by the way, pay attention to these areas that are very important to such a wide range of people with disability, not just slow people. Now I just call myself slow because I can't get too carried away with excitement. Uh, the heart is working very good, but again, I have to pace myself.
Mhm.
Um, but again, going to them is what we have to do. There is
Mhm.
so much, though, that they do have to cover.
Yeah.
So I feel a lot of us have to step it up and remind them, hey, we need to get more words out there. And the deaf community needs to,
Mhm.
get the news coming to them and entertainment as well.
Mhm.
So I'm very busy in doing my part in getting together. Wisdom Oasis is my next chapter. And my next chapter, Wisdom Oasis, is a platform that I'll be catering to seniors because I'm in my senior years and so many people are retiring now and what have you, and the isolation. So I'm trying to help them get information about what they're entitled to, and where to get this, and have a Saturday or Sunday afternoon where we get together and have conversation about things in our age range and building a community to get more attention for people with kidney transplant, heart transplant, people that don't have families. So
Mhm.
that's what do you call a snapshot of
Yeah.
my next chapter, Wisdom Oasis, and
Yeah.
more deaf people coming out and young people participating in this program to give them some experience to go out in the marketplace.
Great. And Rochelle, your perspective on, sort of the lack of or the inadequate media coverage of
So
disability issues.
yeah, because the media is so important in terms of
Yeah.
what we normalize,
Yeah.
right? And so, whenever I share with someone that, yeah, I'm living now with a brain injury and I've been able to navigate, I'd never know. Well, what is like, how would you know? As I told you, like the reality is that there's not enough conversation happening about disabilities and living with disabilities. Mind you, at the beginning of this, you told us about how many people in this country alone are living with
Many.
disabilities,
Mhm.
yet
8 million.
right. And you don't see that anywhere. I think that, as I said, that, organizations need to have these conversations about inclusive design. And so does the media industry, just generally. Like, we should be, when we're even watching the news, we should be able to see various ways that people need to be spoken to. And I think that, one of the most profound things when I used to work at the federal courts, there was a lawyer that was in a wheelchair and he was challenged in various ways. And what I used to love about the experience of having him in the court, one, he was generally one of the smartest lawyers that was there. And he also they would always allow him to submit all of his documentation, in advance. And the judges always made sure that they read all of his representations because they knew that he had challenges speaking. And so they would make sure, but they didn't read anybody else's, but they would read his, right? And then also, when they had questions, they would just show this amount of patience and deference that I never saw that they would offer to other lawyers because they recognized his challenges, but they also recognized his brilliance. And it was really profound, as especially a young person working in the federal courts, to see someone in that space, navigating through that space with various disabilities, both visible and invisible. And, I just think that, as they say, you can't be what you can't see. I think for kids that have disabilities and are navigating through life with disabilities, to see people in the media, to see people represented in the media that are doing amazing and beautiful things, despite what they might be experiencing, or in light of what they're experiencing, I should say, then that is something that would be so powerful, not just for kids who are experiencing that, but for the greater population, because we need to normalize, considering how many people in this country have disabilities, we need to normalize this. We need to normalize the conversations. We need to normalize that those who are, sharing these stories also have disabilities themselves, that, that there's inclusion in terms of, the way the story is even told. And so I think that the media can play a huge part in advancing these conversations, and also ensuring that these are mainstream conversations and not one-off conversations, because of so many people being affected in our population. Yeah.
Thanks for that. And as we close this conversation, which could have gone on for a whole other hour, in 1 minute, could you all sort of send out an inspirational thought out there? Yes, Jennifer.
Pay attention to yourself. You first. Pay attention to yourself. Listen to your body. Listen to your intuition. Pay attention to you first. Happy today.
Excellent. Queen?
Okay, my closing statement is your pace is valid, your process is sacred, your healing is not linear. Whether you're moving through survival or joy, there's room for all of you. You're not alone, you're worthy of care. Your story matters. Yeah, and thank you for holding space for me.
Queen, that's a t-shirt.
I know.
Can you make that t-shirt,
I'm a
please?
poet.
I would buy it.
I'm a poet too. Sometimes, it just comes out.
Please make the t-shirt. I would buy it, and I'm sure many
Yeah.
people would. Yes.
100%.
Last but not least, Rochelle.
I would just say, know what you want and ask for it. I think that the framework is there for you to get what you need. And you're not honoring the world by playing small, or by not offering your gifts to this world. So ask for what you need and get it, so that you can also show your greatness to others.
Absolutely amazing. This was such an amazing conversation. I learned so much. I'm so grateful that you were willing to share your experiences with our audience. And I hope that somebody out there is taking inspiration from what they've heard. And I hope that people online will watch this again, and that people in a work setting will play this conversation, so that they can learn so that they can learn to make their workspace more welcoming and inclusive. And this concludes the season. Thank you very much, ladies, for participating. It was an honor to moderate.
Good afternoon, 100 ABC honorees, friends, and supporters. On behalf of my fellow co-authors and co-founders, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine and Dr. O'Neill Green, we extend our heartfelt thanks to each of you for your steadfast support throughout season 4 of our Fireside Chats. This season has been an incredible journey of learning, sharing, and community building. None of this would have been possible without the generous support of our sponsors like TD Bank, ETFO, and the Carpenters. These organizations are not just sponsors, they are our village, our backbone, standing with us to uplift and amplify Black women across Canada. Our village also includes the many moderators and panelists who generously dedicated their time and energy to us. Presenting live is no small feat. It requires preparation, thoughtfulness, and time, and yet they do it out of love for this generation and the next. We are pleased to share that all of these episodes of season 4 and beyond from our inception are now available on our website as well as our YouTube channel, making it easier than ever for you to watch, revisit, and share these powerful conversations. And yes, they're free. A special thank goes out to our incredible tech support team, Kit, Malcolm, Daniela, Takia, and Sambo for the behind-the-scenes dedication that ensures each episode runs smoothly. You truly made it possible. Finally, to you, our faithful viewing and listening audiences, thank you for believing in us, showing up, and embracing this platform. Your commitment fuels our mission. We can't wait to welcome you back for season 5, launching in January 2026. With sincere gratitude, Donna Jones Simmons, architect of 100 ABC Initiatives. Thank you.
Look how far you have come on your own, but never alone. Through the rain and through the shine, here's your moment. It's your time. You stood tall and now you see, standing in your destiny.